Writing is a process that includes several stages. In this video, we'll discuss what those stages are and how writers use them. The most commonly taught stages of the writing process include invention, drafting, revising, editing, and publishing. You might have heard of the invention stage, referred to as pre-writing or brainstorming. But these other terms are much more limiting than what the invention stage really entails. The invention stage is all about inventing ideas and ways of presenting those ideas. And this can take place in between or even during other stages of the writing process. You are probably already familiar with the terms drafting and revising. Drafting is simply getting your ideas out on this page or screen. Experienced writers typically write many, many drafts before they are satisfied with their work. The work of deleting, rewriting, reorganizing, and even completely reconceptualizing ideas is called revision and takes place between each draft. Getting feedback isn't usually talked about as part of the writing process, but it is a crucial stage. If you are a novice writer, you'll want to get most of your feedback from writers who are more experienced than you, and ideally who have achieved some recognizable level of proficiency and success with their own writing. Getting feedback isn't necessary at every stage of the writing process, but it can be helpful. If you don't have that much time to invest in a writing project, decide which aspects of the writing process you struggle most with and get feedback during those stages. Editing is more about the small scale changes a writer makes to a piece of writing, such as fixing spelling, punctuation, and grammar, switching out one word for another, changing sentence structures, etc. When a writer is finished with a piece of writing or has reached the deadline, the text is submitted to its intended audience. We will call this stage publishing, but it includes any act of submission, such as mailing a letter to its intended recipient, clicking share on a tweet or Facebook status, placing a completed report on the boss's desk, or clicking send on an email. I saved reflection for last because it is quite possibly the most important and least talked about part of the writing process. People who see significant improvements in skill spend time reflecting on their use of that skill. What did I excel at this time? Where did I struggle? How did I implement a new move? Was that implementation effective? Why or why not? These are the kinds of questions you can ask yourself as you practice your writing or any skill. Consider keeping a writing journal devoted specifically to reflection on your writing projects. It can be even more helpful if you get feedback on your reflection too. The most common way the writing process is taught in schools is as a linear model, where all of the stages take place in sequential order. In the linear model, you would complete one stage at a time and then leave that stage behind as you move on to the next stage, as indicated by the arrows on the screen. First, you would spend a little time brainstorming, then you would write a draft. At this point, you might ask for help and get some feedback from a teacher, tutor, classmate, or parent. Then you would ideally use that feedback to help you revise your draft, edit it, and turn it in. The emphasis in the linear model is the finished product, getting it done and turning it in. If reflection occurs at all, it's often at the end of the whole process. Unfortunately, for student writers, the linear model is highly ineffectual. Using the writing process this way is unlikely to yield very positive results. Experienced writers practice a more recursive model. Recursive means repetitive or circular. In other words, the stages of the writing process intertwine. You might move back and forth between the different stages or even practice more than one stage at a time. And I've tried to illustrate this with the arrows on the screen. You might start brainstorming, then write a draft, then go back to brainstorming some more. You might revise as you draft, and you're getting feedback and reflecting on your writing practices the whole time, not only after the writing process ends. The emphasis in the recursive model is not the finished product, but revising, which is more likely to happen multiple times. Most students enter college believing that the stages of the writing process take place in sequential order, but that is not really true. The recursive model asks you to challenge your beliefs about the writing process and start practicing your writing the way experienced writers do. I promise you will see better results. There are several different types of writers, and knowing what kind of writer you are can help you better utilize the writing process to your advantage. For example, heavy planners spend most of their time in the invention stage. They may do a lot of brainstorming and outlining and spend a lot of time thinking about their ideas and talking those ideas out with others. Because heavy planners have spent so much time exploring and refining their ideas, they often don't need to spend as much time drafting and revising. That doesn't mean that they don't do those stages, they just don't spend as much time there. Heavy revisers, on the other hand, typically do better exploring their ideas as they write. As a result, they don't spend much, if any, time brainstorming and may not ever write an outline at all. Instead, they start right in on a draft and refine their ideas as they revise many, many times. They are practicing the invention stage as they draft and revise instead of before or in between those stages. A sequential composer is someone who spends a fairly equal amount of time on each stage of the writing process. There is nothing wrong with any of these styles of composing. It is, however, important to figure out how you work best, so you can relate to a writing process that works for you. This will help you maximize your level of productivity. There is one type of writer you don't want to be, a procrastinator. Procrastinators put almost all of the work of writing off until the last possible moment. They rarely write more than one draft and spend almost no time brainstorming, drafting, or revising. They often submit their first draft and usually do not earn good grades or publish their work. If you are a procrastinator, you might have yourself convinced that you do your best work under pressure, but scientific studies have proven this untrue. No one does their best work as a last-ditch effort, and no one improves a skill by investing so little effort and care. We're talking about the writing process, and we'll be practicing it as it relates to academic writing. Academic writing is a conversation, or more precisely, a set of many conversations about a wide variety of topics. Every academic discipline has a different, though often overlapping, set of conversations. As a result, the writing you are assigned in various college courses you take throughout your academic career will likely ask you to join a variety of different conversations, each with a unique set of expectations. There are some things we can generally count on, though. For starters, conversations, no matter the topic, almost always have a few common key components. As students, you will be joining academic conversations that are already in progress. This means that first and foremost, you will be expected to respond to others. One class might ask you to respond to information that was presented in class or assigned reading from the textbook, while another class might expect you to do your own research to find out what scholars in that field are saying. Once you have a good grasp of what the topic of conversation is and what academics have to say on that particular topic, it's a good idea to ask questions. You might pose these questions in class to your instructor and fellow classmates, or you might discuss your questions with your instructor during office hours, or maybe with some other professional in that field on your own time. Often you will need to pose your own research questions and then go on a quest to find the answers. Posing questions sets you up to better understand an issue and to find out areas that could still be explored in unique and interesting ways. Once you have the answers you need, you are in a good position to start presenting your own original thoughts on the issue. As you do this, you should always take great care to state your points clearly and directly. In personal conversations with friends and family, we might be more used to talking around a subject and implying most of our meaning. This is typically viewed as more polite, less intrusive and aggressive, and therefore less likely to instigate conflict. In academic writing, however, it is important to be direct, assertive, specific, and clear with every word we put down on the page. Finally, stay focused. Getting diverted from our main point often happens in informal conversations, but academic writing demands focus. No tangents or sidebar conversations here. I've been using the phrase academic writing to refer generally to all writing you might do in the academic setting of college. But I don't want you to get the incorrect impression that all academic writing is the same or has the same set of expectations. The writing you do for a history class will have a different set of expectations than the writing you do for a psychology class. And that writing will be different still from the writing you do for a literature course. This is one of the most frustrating parts of writing for many students. The rules always seem to be changing. So I want you to forget about rules for now and focus instead on a different word: conventions. Conventions are a set of expectations that an audience has of a particular genre. For example, you wouldn't go to the theater to see a horror movie expecting that the protagonist and the killer will fall in love, get married, and live happily ever after. That breaks from the conventions of the genre. It breaks a promise the filmmakers made to the audience when they labeled it a horror film. Writing works in the same way. Every genre of writing, that is, every different type of writing, has a different set of conventions or agreements with its audience that writers are generally expected to adhere to. While each academic discipline will have some of its own conventions, there are a few you can typically rely on no matter what course you are taking. For example, you will be expected to use standard edited American English. Basically, follow the standard rules of grammar, punctuation, and spelling. Your academic writing should also utilize clear and recognizable patterns of organization, like chronological or emphatic order. To help your reader understand the way you have organized your ideas, you need to mark the relationships among your ideas with transition words and phrases. As I have already noted, you should state your claims explicitly and provide appropriate support. You should also present your ideas as a response to others and express your ideas clearly and directly. You will also need to pay attention to how conventions vary across academic disciplines. You can start doing this by carefully analyzing the assigned reading in each of your classes. For example, your history textbook probably organizes information in chronological order and uses past tense verbs, while your English textbook likely organizes information in order of importance and uses present tense verbs. Note these kinds of differences and incorporate them into your own writing for these classes. Finally, academic writing will always expect you to document your sources and cite information correctly. Not citing the sources for ideas that you have taken from another person is considered plagiarism and can have serious consequences. Even how you cite sources, though, can vary from one class to another. Classes that fall under the umbrella of the humanities typically require MLA style for document formatting and citations, while classes in the sciences and social sciences will usually prefer APA style, and history and political science favor Chicago style. Most often, your professors will require a specific style, but if they don't mention it, you can always ask. An important fact to remember about writing is that it is a skill, and as such, it is something you can improve at with the right attitude and dedicated practice. But you have to set realistic expectations. A lot of students lament that writing is hard for them. Writing is hard. Not just for you, though, for everybody. Even professional writers will tell you how difficult writing is for them. Author Harlan Ellison said, "Writing is the hardest work in the world." And Joseph Heller, author of the famous novel Catch-22, said, "Every writer I know has trouble writing." Anne Lamott tackles the difficulty of writing by starting with what she so lovingly refers to as shitty first drafts. You can read more about her strategy in her essay titled Shitty First Drafts in the notes below this video. I say that writing is hard for everyone, not to discourage you, but to help you see that you are not alone. Writing is quite possibly the most challenging mental work humans engage in. On the plus side, writing is not some mysterious act that only people with some sort of inborn genius can do well at. If you are in a writing course, writing will likely be broken down into a process, and the various aspects of the process will be demystified. If you pay attention and practice what you are learning, you can improve your writing skills. If you want to improve your writing, you must practice and practice a lot. There are no shortcuts. You must also get feedback from others who are better than you. If you are taking a writing course, pay close attention to your professor's feedback. You might also ask your instructor for extra feedback outside of class during his or her office hours. Most likely, your college or university has free writing tutoring through a writing center or learning lab of some sort. And most people know at least one person who is an experienced writer, whether that is a former teacher, a relative who writes a lot for a job, or a friend of a friend who published a book. And many times these people will be willing to give you feedback on your writing. Perhaps for free, but recognize that you are asking for professional advice and possibly offer them a small compensation, even if it's just taking them out for coffee. The short of it is that there are resources available to you. Very likely free resources, but no one is going to help you unless you seek it out. So get out there and ask for feedback. Another way to improve your writing skills is to study other writers. Find writers you admire and enjoy reading and analyze what they have written. Try to emulate their style with your own content. Again, a more experienced writer can help you with this. If you play a musical instrument or a sport, you don't just magically become great at that skill. You have to log long hours of practice each week, get feedback from a teacher or coach, and study the greats to try to emulate them. Writing is no different. As you work on practicing your writing, remember that practice makes improvement, not perfection. If your writings are fairly weak, you're not likely to become the next great American novelist in a few short weeks. That kind of success typically takes years, even decades of focused practice. In fact, to reach a level of elite mastery in any skill, author Malcolm Gladwell and other social scientists claim that a person would need to log at least 10,000 hours of practice. That's a lot of writing. You don't need to be a master, but you do need to be competent. Set realistic expectations for yourself that you can reasonably achieve. And you will see big improvements, such as seeing your grades on writing assignments improve a full letter grade or two, maybe even more. Most importantly, always acknowledge and celebrate your successes when you reach a goal.